Well, Jesus loved to tell parables. And there's 29 or 30 parables that Jesus tells as he's teaching the people. And he uses parables because he knows that people will remember stories. And lots of the parables that Jesus taught and told, we kind of like, because they're kind of a neat story. They got sometimes a twist to them. But of all the parables that Jesus spoke, this one is the most problematic for many people. It's suggested that this is the least known parable of all the stories that Jesus told. And it causes a great deal of challenge because of the dishonesty of the manager who is looking after his master's money. And in the 16th chapter of Luke's Gospel, it is a very fascinating story. And this manager has been looking after his master's stuff, and the master was very wealthy, and the manager had the responsibility and the authority of the master. Anything that the manager said and negotiated would be the law. In the Greco-Roman day, when they did a bill, they always had the person who was requesting a loan or something write it out in their own handwriting, and therefore it then could not be disputed when the time came for it to collect. And the master heard that there was something wrong with what was going on, and so he brings this manager up to account. He says, "Get all your books in order and show them to me because you're going to be gone." And the manager goes crazy and he goes, "What am I going to do now?" And so instantly he goes out to all the people who owed his master money, and he changes the arrangement. He says, "Quickly, take the contract that you wrote with me the first time and half it for the first person. And then the second person, he made 80%. And the interesting part of the story is that when Jesus tells this story in the first 7 verses, then it seems that Jesus is admiring the dishonesty of this manager. He said, "You are shrewd, you are clever, you are crafty." And it's because of this statement that people wrestle with this parable. And so I want to talk about it this morning because it has some interesting things to offer us. There are 3 things that this unusual parable has to offer us and tell us. One is connected with the church, the wider church, and the other 2 are connected more directly to you and I as individuals. And so the first comment I want to make is that there is a message here for the church today. This parable is talking a little bit about you and I and the people who are coming down in the church. And Jesus was not suggesting that the manager was someone we should follow, but he realized that the manager in this time of distress and pressure was not complacent. Often when we get good news, if you walk into work on Monday morning and they go, "You're fired, you're gone," we get panicky and we become paralyzed by the tragic news. And often being paralyzed when news comes to us is one of the things that's very natural. And Jesus was trying to help the early church to understand that there's going to be struggles, there's going to be challenges, but the one thing they do not want to do is they do not want to become complacent. And in the passage here, here's a quote that I found from the Dalai Lama. He says, "It's unrealistic to think that the future of humanity can be achieved only on the basis of prayer. What we need is to take action." And Jesus was trying to stimulate the church of the early days and said, when I'm gone, when the time comes for you to have the church grow, action is going to be the name of the game, not sitting around just simply praying that something is going to take place. You're going to pray, but you also want to take action. And we're at a very interesting time within the church because the churches are under a lot of stress these days for lots of different reasons. And this parable is a reminder that we're called not to become complacent, not to believe that it's inevitable. And some clergy and some of the leaders in the church believe that it's just inevitable what's going to unfold in the church, and there's nothing we can do about it. But Jesus says, don't become complacent. Be like the shrewd manager. Because in the time of distress, in the time of challenge, he became very, very motivated to do something, because he said, I can't dig ditches, I'm too old for that, not strong enough, and I don't want to beg, and so there's some other course of action I need to take. And he goes, I know what it is. And he takes that action. And in the 8th verse here, Jesus said, for the people of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own kind than the people of the light. And sometimes in the church, people think that the church is to be passive. That we're not to be, taking initiatives and getting out there and interacting and having goals in which to strive after. And in this parable, Jesus is warning the church not to be complacent. The second thing is about the church is to be a place of action. The church is called to be creative. The church is called to be stimulated to move in directions. In Proverbs, the 12th chapter, 24th verse, it says, a person of action. A lot of people talk about what they're going to do. Be the person that does it. There's a lot of truth to that. When you talk to people, they talk about what they would like to do and what they think they will do. And boy, it would be nice if we did this. And have you heard people talk about all the things that they want to do, and not one person takes any initiative? And Jesus says, as Christians, we're called to be people of action, that we step out boldly because of the faith that we have in Christ. And we try not ever to become complacent. And the third message for the church, is to be creative and unique. That was the one thing that amazed Jesus about this man, is he had a very interesting and creative way of securing his future. He decided that he was going to go to all the people before everybody knew that he had been fired, and he renegotiated the contract. And the reason he did that, not so that he would get money, because he didn't get any of the money, but in the Greco-Roman world, it was a very specific belief that if someone was incredibly generous to you, that there was a responsibility to reciprocate. And the man was counting on the fact that if he was going to be generous and reduce these large sums of money for these individuals who were clients of his master, that they would respond with generosity to him, invite him to come and live with them, at least for a while, after he was fired. And the church is called to be creative, to learn how to do ministry differently. One of the biggest challenges of the church is that when we do something that's successful, it is almost very hard to stop doing that. And we are called to be creative, to use the minds that God has given us, to listen to the Spirit, and to find new ways that we have never done it before, to go and interact and connect with people and draw them in to the fellowship with Christ. Well, the second message, I don't have a watch, so tell me if I get too long there, Andrew. Second is a message for the people today, and the first message is that there is a connection between the present and the future. And the manager, who was very crafty, understood this. He realized that after he was going to be fired, there would be great shame and that he would not get another job. And so that's why he took this plan to go out and do something about it. And he realized that if he did something now, there would be positive consequences for him in the future. And you and I, as we live out our lives, we have to understand that the present is the place where ministry takes place. The present is the location where change begins. Nobody changes in the future. That's part of the difficulty. Most people say, tomorrow, next week, I'm going to change. Sometime in the future, I'm going to make a shift and change my life. And the difficulty is that never happens because change cannot happen in the future. There's only one place that you can shift and change and redirect your life, and it's right now in the moment. And Jesus is calling individuals to make shifts and changes in their life right now that will have a positive impact on their future. And to deepen faith today so that tomorrow you can be the kind of individuals that give leadership and strength to the church and to our community in a fashion and in a way that God is calling us to lead. And today we're looking for people who are committed to a spiritual path, committed to the principles of the Christian faith, committed to the principles of Christ, being open to the presence of the Holy Spirit, to begin to shift and change our life right now, today, starting at this moment. And in each moment, deciding to live not for ourselves, not for the benefits just simply of my family, but for the blessings and the benefit of Christ, and to follow in the footsteps that Christ gave us. And the manager in this story had all the right principles, just redirected in the wrong way. And Jesus says, use that kind of creativity. Use that initiative to take charge of the moment. And it changes how the future will unfold. There's a funny story I read about a man who was stranded on a desert island. It was a fairly big island, and he thought he was alone. For the first couple of weeks, he just sort of stayed close to the home base that he made once he washed ashore. And he kind of felt that he was going to be all alone on that island. And so he began, after a couple of weeks, to go out and start exploring. And when he got a couple of days' journey away, he realized that he wasn't alone. In fact, there was another tribe that lived on this island. And at first, he was really anxious and fearful of this tribe. He wasn't quite sure what kind of a tribe it was and whether, they would embrace him or not. And one day, one of the tribe's people discovered him, and he was very fearful at first, but they welcomed him into the tribe. In fact, they made him the head person of the tribe, the king of the tribe. And the man was surprised and completely overwhelmed, and they did everything for him. They fed him, they gave him the best accommodations, and as he continued to move through the next several months, he began to understand what was going on. And he heard the story that every year they have a new king in the tribe, and the king is treated with the best of everything. But the catch was that after the first year, then they took the king across the water and left them alone to die on a deserted island. And the king got worried. He goes, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? I only have 6 months left. And then he thought to himself, I'm the king, so I can get the people to do anything I want. And so he put together a group of people and he said, your responsibility is to go over to the island and build a house there. And then clear some land and build some crops. And then he took 4 or 5 of the people when he just had a month left, and he put 4 or 5 of his best friends over there so that when the year came to a close, they put him in the canoe and they took him to the island. But instead of being abandoned and deserted, he had prepared for his future with others. And we're called to have that kind of creativity as individuals, and to have that kind of faith and spirituality that sees life from a different perspective, that can have a positive impact upon other people and help the church to grow, but more importantly, to help individuals embrace the wonder of the spirituality and the faith that we have in Christ. Well, the last message is about using all your resources for others. The master gave the manager the resources that he had in his household to look after. And Christ gives us resources. And Christ calls us to give time, energy, and our financial resources for other people so that lives will be changed. To reach out and make a difference in the life of people that are wrestling and struggling, so that they can get to a point where they don't struggle so much anymore and they can move in life independently on their own. The rabbis had a very interesting saying, and it said that the rich help the poor in this world, but the poor help the rich in the world to come. The rich help the poor by giving their resources, but the poor ensure a positive future for the rich when we learn how to share what we have with people who are in need. At the end of this statement, Jesus said, you cannot have two masters. You'll love the one, hate the other, obey the one, and not obey the other. And Jesus is trying to help us understand how important it is to use our resources that we are given from God, our time. One of the greatest commodities today is time. People say, I have no time, I'm too busy. But as part of that busyness, serving others. It's part of that time that you invest in a week connected with engaging in people in different social, economic brackets. It's the energy that you use and that is given to you God each day, and you get up refreshed every day and you use the energy of that day to serve people who are in need. Whether it's pulling over and helping someone with a flat tire, or phoning someone who is lonely, or doing something in a tangible way for another person. And do we use our financial resources for the billions of people in our world that are in need? This idea of working in congruence is about learning how to be congruent as a Christian. And so that the words that I speak and the actions of my life communicate exactly the same message. And when you call yourself a Christian and people know that you're part of Grace Church, they see you in congruence as someone who is compassionate and grace-filled and loving and forgiving and generous and open to serving people within the community. Is that what your neighbors see when they see you? Or do they just see another person like themselves? The Christian faith is about being congruent. It's about making all the aspects of our life send exactly the same message to the people that are around us. And when we have that congruence, we encounter a sense of oneness and peace. Often people say, I just want peace in my life. I just want to feel peaceful. And one of the mistakes that people make is they think peace is coming from outside. Somehow they're going to get a shower of peace, like you get a rain shower. But peace doesn't come from outside, it comes from within. And when we're congruent spiritually, when our faith and our actions are one and the same, it's at that moment we encounter the peace that many are looking for. I want to close with a little video, and it talks about why we give. And so this morning, as you journey in life, I want you to take a look at your life and ask the question, how congruent am I? Is what I say and what I believe the same as the things that I do? Do I have the ability to serve Christ in tangible ways, not just once in a while, but look for opportunities every day? And do I use the resources of my time and my energy and my finances in equal ways so that there will be peace within, but there will be changed lives all around me? May you find that congruence in the story of the unjust manager. Amen.